On January 21, 1924, the founder of the Soviet state, Vladimir Lenin, died. According to the official version, the cause of death was widespread atherosclerosis caused by the premature wearing out of the blood vessels, which led to a disruption of blood circulation in the brain. However, in the mid-1990s, a Soviet and Russian surgeon, academician of the Russian Academy of Medical Sciences, Yuri Lopukhine, conducted a study of archival documents related to the period of Lenin's illness and death. The conclusion reached by academician Lopukhine completely refuted the official version and explained the strange course of the illness. Here is what he wrote in his book, The Illness, Death, and Embalming of Lenin.
The People's Commissar of Health, effectively the Soviet Minister of Health, Nikolai Semashko, invited many prominent and well-known specialists from Russia and Europe for consultations. Unfortunately, they all rather confused than clarified the nature of Lenin's illness. The patient was sequentially given 3 incorrect diagnoses, according to which he was treated incorrectly. The archive contains at least 3 different versions of Lenin's autopsy protocols. Written by hand from dictation, they bear numerous traces of edits, searches for the most correct phrasing, and are riddled with crossed-out paragraphs, insertions, and so on. They contain everything, both justifications for the medical actions of the doctors, mostly dubious and even incorrect, and alleged successes of the undertaken treatment brought to the forefront.
What was Lenin really suffering from, and what was the true cause of his death? In the middle of 1921, Lenin showed the first signs of illness in the form of brief dizzy spells with loss of consciousness, constant insomnia, headaches, and severe fatigue. Initially, his family and attending physicians viewed this as signs of overwork and the result of excessive strain. Indeed, Lenin had to work an incredible amount. His sister, Maria Ulyanova, testified.
On February 23, 1921, Lenin took part in 40 meetings where he chaired, gave orders, and wrote draft resolutions. In addition, on the same day, he received 68 people for discussions on current problems, and this was essentially a daily occurrence.
His attending physicians, neurologist Professor Livery Darkshevich, experienced internist Professor Fyodor Getty, and Professors Ottfried Forster and Georg Klemperer, who were summoned from Germany, initially agreed on the need for prolonged rest. However, it soon became clear that this was of little help. The Soviet leader survived the winter of 1921 to 1922 with great difficulty. According to Professor Darkshevich, Lenin was tormented by 2 distressing phenomena. Firstly, a mass of extremely severe neurasthenic symptoms completely deprived him of the ability to work, and secondly, a series of obsessions that greatly frightened the patient upon their appearance. Lenin anxiously asked Darkshevich,
"This surely does not threaten madness, does it?"
Unlike the doctors, Lenin by this time already understood that he was severely ill. In early April 1922, the Soviet leader's condition improved slightly, but soon all the distressing symptoms returned with renewed vigor. Agonizing headaches, exhausting insomnia, and nervousness appeared. Lenin was unable to participate in all the sessions of the 11th Congress of the Bolshevik Party, delivering only a very brief closing remark at the end. The German professors, Forster and Klemperer, insisted on the removal of the bullets left in Lenin's body after the assassination attempt on him in August 1918 at the Michelson plant. They believed that Lenin's poor health was the result of chronic lead poisoning and, possibly, the consequence of poisoning by the curare venom contained in the bullets. Here it is necessary to clarify. Curare venom was indeed present in the incisions of the bullets, but when fired, due to high temperatures, it lost its poisonous properties. As Professor Vladimir Rozanov believed, an operation to extract them would bring more harm than good, since over the past 4 years, the bullets had become encapsulated in scar tissue. Lenin himself was skeptical about this proposal, agreeing to the removal of only one, just to get them off his back. A renowned German surgeon, Professor Moritz Borchardt, was invited and removed the supraclavicular bullet. However, this had no positive effect on Lenin's steadily deteriorating health. In the late spring of 1922, Lenin left for his country estate, Gorky, outside Moscow. There, on the night of May 26th, he suffered his first stroke. He felt weakness in his right arm and right leg, and a headache began, accompanied by vomiting. In the morning, Lenin had difficulty explaining what had happened. He could not read, the letters swam before his eyes. He tried to write, but managed to draw only the letter M. These sensations did not last long, about an hour, and then disappeared. The invited doctors, Professor Getty and Lenin's personal physician, Dr. Levin, suggested that this was a consequence of gastritis. On Getty's advice, Lenin took a laxative. The illness indeed had an unusual character. Paralysis and loss of motor function in the right arm and right leg recurred many times thereafter and quickly disappeared. The headaches were also periodic. Lenin's handwriting changed, it became small. The difficulty in performing simple arithmetic tasks and the loss of memory capacity were striking, but what was most astonishing was that his professional intellect was fully preserved until the final stage. All this did not fit into the clinical picture of atherosclerosis. On May 29th, a large medical council of professors convened. Having noted the unusual nature of the illness, they suggested the possibility of a syphilitic brain infection. It must be said that in the early 20th century, syphilis in various forms was widespread both in Europe and in Russia. According to the logic of the doctors of that period, in complex and incomprehensible medical cases, it was the first thing they suspected. For consultation, they invited a neurologist, Professor Alexei Kozhevnikov, who specifically studied syphilitic brain lesions, and an experienced ophthalmologist, Mikhail Averbach. Although they found no noticeable signs of syphilis, they nevertheless did not rule out the possibility. Lenin was prescribed arsenic injections, which had long been the primary treatment for this disease. According to the memoirs of Lenin's personal secretary, Lydia Fotieva, on May 30th, being in an extremely depressed state, Lenin asked Stalin to bring him poison to end his life. Stalin initially agreed, but then refused and persuaded Lenin to wait until there was no hope for recovery. Stalin well understood the full historical responsibility and the potential political consequences of such an act. In early June 1922, the Soviet leader's health began to improve significantly. His speech and coordination of movements were restored, and the partial paralysis of his right arm disappeared. Lenin began to write and read fluently. In mid-June, he was allowed to get out of bed. The daily headaches ceased completely in August, and his sleep improved. By the end of August, his motor functions were fully restored. Lenin was permitted to read newspapers and books. On October 2nd, Lenin returned to Moscow. He was overwhelmed with affairs. On October 3rd, he chaired a meeting of the Council of People's Commissars, the highest executive body of the Soviet government. On October 6th, he participated in a party plenum but felt unwell. November 1922 became the last active month in Lenin's political life. He still chaired meetings of the Council of People's Commissars and participated in meetings of the Politburo and the Council of Labor and Defense. On November 13th, he delivered a speech in German at the 4th Congress of the Comintern with a report titled 5 Years of the Russian Revolution. Lenin's last public appearance took place on November 20th at a session of the Moscow City Council. His health was deteriorating. The Medical Council, which convened on November 25th, insisted on immediate and complete rest. But Lenin delayed due to urgent matters, and only on December 7th did he leave for Gorky. Despite his fatigue, he prepared for a speech at the 10th Congress of Soviets, a major assembly of elected representatives. On December 16th, Lenin suffered a second stroke with right-sided paralysis and a complete loss of speech. Stalin convened a meeting with senior Bolshevik leaders, Lev Kamenev and Nikolai Bukharin, as well as the attending physicians. A decision was made to isolate Lenin from political life. He was allowed only 10-minute dictations. On March 9, 1923, a third stroke followed. Lenin's condition deteriorated sharply. He suffered a severe 2-hour seizure, resulting in a complete loss of speech and paralysis of the right leg. Academician Lopukhin believes that this was influenced by an incident with Stalin. Here is what he writes.
Back in December, while implementing the decision to isolate Lenin, Stalin insulted his wife, Nadezhda Krupskaya, over the phone, rudely demanding that she not talk to Lenin about business affairs, otherwise he would drag her before the party tribunal. 2.5 months later, Krupskaya told Lenin about this episode, who became extremely agitated and wrote a harsh letter to Stalin, demanding, under the threat of breaking off relations, to take back what was said and apologize. Stalin took back his words but refused to admit his guilt. This incident heavily impacted the course of Lenin's illness.
On March 10th, the seizure recurred. Lenin became bedridden with a complete loss of speech. In mid-May 1923, the Soviet leader's health began to improve. He was moved from his Kremlin apartment to Gorky. In mid-July, Lenin began to walk, tried to write with his left hand, and by August was already browsing newspapers. His speech began to recover very quickly. He was in a good mood. He was clearly recovering. On October 18th, Lenin asked to be taken to Moscow. This was his farewell visit to the Kremlin. He went into his office, drove through the agricultural exhibition, stayed overnight, and in the morning left for Gorky, where he was to remain until his death. Lenin's condition was satisfactory. In January 1924, he organized a Christmas tree for the children of the state farm and even went out into the forest on a sleigh to observe a hunt. On January 21st, after lunch, the patient was examined by Professors Otfrid Forster and Viktor Osipov. Soon after, the final attack of the illness began. From Krupskaya's memoirs.
He was given broth, which he drank greedily. Then he calmed down a little, but soon a gurgling sound started in his chest. His gaze became increasingly unconscious. At times he groaned hollowly. A spasm ran through his body. I held him at first by his hot, wet hand, then only watched as the handkerchief became stained with blood, as the seal of death settled on his deathly pale face. Professor Forster and Dr. Elistratov injected camphor and tried to maintain artificial respiration, but nothing worked. It was impossible to save him.
Lenin died. He was 53 years old. In early June 1924, an autopsy of the body was performed the next day in Gorky, in a room on the 2nd floor. The autopsy was entrusted to an outstanding pathologist, Professor Alexei Abrikosov, whom the People's Commissar of Health, Semashko, urgently brought from Moscow. The autopsy revealed the presence of numerous areas of necrosis in the brain tissue, predominantly in the left hemisphere, which was severely damaged and had lost more than a third of its mass. The left internal carotid artery turned out to be completely blocked. The right carotid artery had a somewhat narrowed lumen. Neither the autopsy nor the microscopic analysis of the tissue samples taken for examination revealed any signs of syphilis or serious changes due to atherosclerosis. Of course, Lenin had atherosclerosis, but no more than any person at the age of 50. Moreover, the course of Lenin's illness did not correspond to the progression of cerebral atherosclerosis. Nevertheless, academician Lopukhin established the true cause that led to Lenin's death. It was the bullet stuck in the cervical region after the assassination attempt at the Michelson plant in 1918. At the time of the assassination attempt, it hit the spine of the scapula, piercing the apex of the left lung, and became lodged in the neck area, which contains a dense network of blood vessels, including the common carotid artery that supplies blood to the brain. The bullet damaged the wall of the carotid artery and the surrounding neck tissues. Subsequently, Lenin experienced a narrowing of the left carotid artery, not due to atherosclerosis, but due to the constricting scars left by the bullet. This proceeded asymptomatically until the moment the scars blocked the lumen of the artery by 80%. In all likelihood, this happened by early 1921. The further course of the illness, with periods of improvements and deteriorations, is typical for complications of this kind.